So every now and then some news will show up that's just really cool. It's just kind of out there. And in this case, it actually has to do with the Dreamcast. Do you remember the Dreamcast? It came out in 1999, so it was a little while ago now, almost 17 years. And it came out, it was only out for about a year and a half before it got discontinued. The PS2 kind of took that system out when it came out because it did DVDs, the graphics were better, and overall the PS2 is just a more accepted system, whereas the Dreamcast kind of fell off and then went away pretty quickly. After it was discontinued, they were pretty much being fired, sold everywhere for like $50. I remember I got an extra one because it was being sold for $50, so it was pretty easy to get a hold of, but there were a lot of really interesting concepts that showed up on the Dreamcast. If I had to give the Dreamcast anything, it was that they did everything they could to be different and innovative from the rest of the video game industry. Now, there's a game called Floigan Bros, or Floigan Brothers, and it came out actually about 3 or 4 months after the Dreamcast was discontinued. So yes, it released after the system was no longer in production and was officially cut off by Sega. And I assume it was already in production. They had finished most of it, and they were like, you know what, we're just going to release it and get whatever sales we can from a system that is no longer being supported by its parent company, Sega. The company that put out Floigan Bros was Visual Concepts, and they had a really cool idea that most of us probably see as normal everyday stuff now, but back then this wasn't normal. Their idea was to use DLC to keep the game relevant and interesting. And believe it or not, this was the first case, really, that I can tell anyway, of on-disc DLC. You know, the thing that everyone gets mad at companies and corporations about, specifically Capcom when they did it with Resident Evil 5. Well, this game apparently had on-disc DLC, and their plan was to release it as we went along. Every month or 2 months or so, they were going to release a new piece of DLC. Now, it wasn't anything big. It was like little things like hats and costumes, things like that. But they were going to release it as they went along, and the way that would work is you would sign into the Sega network with your Dreamcast, hook up through your modem, or if you were fortunate, you would hook it up through your broadband adapter on the back of your Dreamcast, and you would download a file that would sit on your virtual memory unit, or the VMU, the little screen memory cards, and then the DLC would unlock. But of course, the system is pretty much discontinued, and we have a problem. It won't be able to be updated because then the servers go offline, and then there's a problem. In fact, Visual Concepts, from what I can tell, pretty much scrapped the idea after they realized people from the Dreamcast were then moving on to the PS2, and from there, the GameCube and Xbox. So it was pretty much a lost cause, but the DLC remained on the disc. On that game disc you get, Floigan Bros, it was on there. It was locked. It was encrypted behind what I assumed to be a little key that you would download when it was released every other month. And apparently they're going to have this go on for about a year. They were looking to keep this game as relevant as possible with new stuff for a year, and that was a good idea back then because no one was really doing this, at least not that heavily, definitely not on a schedule where it was free, and you just download little files that unlock tiny little things to let you go back to the game and have it be interesting. Well, in this case, they were met with some issues, obviously, with the Dreamcast. There were file size limitations, but they got around that by including it on the disc, which now you wouldn't have that. I think that might be why more people got mad about Resident Evil 5. We don't have issues where we're signing into dial-up and you have to download hundreds of megs of data. In this case, it was probably a couple kilobytes and you're good. But after that, they pretty much left the DLC dormant on the disc, and it was impossible to access until now. So fast forward roughly 16 years to now, and the original team from Visual Concepts, which was really cool, came out and made it happen. They unlocked the DLC for us, which is so cool to do, considering they're probably way off in different parts of their career and lives. To come back and do this is really interesting. And this was reported by the website Dreamcast Live, and they really keep up with the Dreamcast and news and happenings, because people still release games and stuff for the Dreamcast. It's weird to think, but it's still an extremely popular game for developers to kind of do homebrew games on, because unfortunately it was very easy to pirate and burn discs for even back then. So 3 members of the original team from Visual Concepts, Tim Meekins, Nick Jones, and John Elliott, came back, put out a save file that you download to your VMU. The way that works is you go to the site that has it, which I believe they have on Dreamcast Live. You go on there, and you actually access it through your web browser on your Dreamcast, which there are still ways to make that happen. You can hook it up through, obviously, a broadband adapter, or you can do some funny stuff with your modem on the back of your desktop computer with your Dreamcast, or you can, I guess, still plug into a phone line with it. I haven't tried it myself in a while, but I assume you still can. Dial into certain servers, browse the web, hit the link, download it to your VMU, and all the DLC will be unlocked. What's really cool is, up until now, none of this DLC was archived online. In fact, the only real one that was the first one, which was a knitted, like a knitted hat for your character, and that was the only DLC that anyone ever was able to document. But now all of this stuff is out. It's being documented online now, and a lot of it was like holiday themed. So they had like Halloween costumes, 4th of July fireworks, an Easter egg hunt, like a little mini game for Easter, all kinds of stuff like that. It's just a cool idea. It just got lost in time, and all of a sudden it's unlocked. Just these guys come back, they do it, and out of nowhere there's just this really cool bit of news from the retro scene, and it just goes to show you never know what's going to happen in the days as you go along. You know, who would have thought 16 years later DLC is unlocked for a Dreamcast game? You know, we had that Primal Rage 2 dug up. You never know. So it's very cool. It's interesting. And you know what? If I got my Dreamcast out, maybe I would try this. I don't have Floigan Bros, but I'm sure I could get it online, hopefully for not very expensive. Or you could pretty much burn it. I mean, that's just the way it is now because some of these games are hard to find. But what a cool idea. I hope you guys enjoyed this little look into the retro world of the Dreamcast. And like I said, if you don't have a Dreamcast, it's a cool system to get. Mostly because at this point, if you can't find the games because people try to scalp them for obscene amounts of money sometimes, if you get the right kinds, you can burn the disc and move on from there. It's just cool to see DLC like this come out. The original developers come back to their game that they created and unlock the DLC for fans. Very cool. Very cool job from Visual Concepts developers. I think that's really neat. And definitely check back in tomorrow, guys. We are going to do some work with the USB adapters for the Switch, and I will see you next time.